welcome back to the Grace Within podcast. I'm so happy that you're here and you're back. I have a beautiful guest today joining me, and I'm really excited to introduce her. And we've just met I guess like a week ago. And we started to get to know each other, and I was really kind of inspired to bring her on. So, before becoming a sought after spiritual and business coach, Jennifer's journey was anything but easy. Despite her drive and ambition, she found herself stuck at the same level of for years, feeling unworthy and unsure of how to break free. But everything changed when she discovered the power of shifting her identity, stepping into her divine worth and embracing the wisdom of the divine feminine. From there, Jennifer's success skyrocketed. She's been featured on the front page of the New York Times, worked along with Dr. Jane Goodall, and raised over $100 million in her career. But beyond financial success, she actually found a way to create abundance that honors intuition, creativity, and spirituality. And now it's really interesting that she teaches women how to do the same, blending nature's wisdom, feminine energy, and money strategies to help them build thriving businesses and lives that feel truly aligned. And I cannot wait to dive into this conversation with herself here today and explore how we can all step into our worth, attract abundance, and create success on our own terms. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. What a beautiful introduction.
Well, why don't you start to introduce yourself, maybe how you're feeling today, and yeah, what you're inspired to share today?
Yeah, I love the setting that Sarah has shared for us. Just having this beautiful, cozy conversation about empowering women. I think it's so important. I know, Sarah, like when you and I talked last week, just the idea of the society that we live in, and when we think about money and we think about it being so often more of a masculine thing. And we think about power and we think about power over instead of power with.
Mm.
And as I woke up this morning, I was so excited for this conversation because I think we need to be having more conversations like this. Like we're so, I think, so often timid of being open and candid and vulnerable about our money stories. But when women can come together and just even say, yeah, I'm feeling behind in my finances, or I'm feeling insecure, or I don't feel worthy of asking for more, or I'm scared to raise my prices, when we can come together and talk about this, it dissolves the shame and the stigma that comes with it, and it allows us to really embrace our power and learn from each other.
Mm. I know, Jennifer, that for me in my past, there was a lot of money blocks, and still to this day, I'm working on it. So when we're having conversation, I feel like this would be perfect for my audience and even for me to actually get a new perspective about changing the narrative we have around money. And, why don't we begin to, start, maybe you can share a little bit about your past and how maybe that was an inspiration, where that inspiration came from and where you are in your journey, in connection with money, how you just made the whole transition to becoming this woman that you are today.
Yeah, I would say that it really started in a pivotal moment that I had when I was in my 20s. And at the time, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship and barely making ends meet. I was $40,000 in debt and dodging collection calls. And I was driving down this beautiful tree-lined street in this really wealthy neighborhood, and I saw people coming home from work and they were greeting their loved ones and their neighbors. And I was like, I want what they have. Like, I want the beautiful home. I want the good relationship and the love and the community and all of that. And the moment that I thought that, I heard a voice that said, you're too broke and you're too broken to have that. And that was my identity for the longest time. And I believed that. And so I was really used to hearing that voice. So that wasn't different.
Mm.
Different thing that happened in that moment was I also heard a voice the moment that I heard "You're too broken, broken." Another voice came up and it said, "Jennifer, you are meant for more." And I knew in that moment that that was my soul speaking, that was the divine speaking, and that was the truth. And I had a choice in that moment to either choose my old identity or to choose that worthy and wealthy was who I was. That was my identity. And from that moment on, I decided that worthy and wealthy was who I was. And every decision from that day forward had to align with that identity. And I'm not saying that it was easy work, but I really dove into a lot of the self-worth practices. I spent a lot of time in nature, getting clear on my intuition, kind of saying prayers as I was walking, and really getting clear on the core wounding of like why I was struggling in my money, why I was struggling with worth, and begin to heal that. And as I healed and as I started to make more bold choices that were aligned with this worthy and wealthy self, opportunities started to open up. I went back and got my master's degree. And in a short period of time, I was working with Goodall, and I was hired as one of the youngest philanthropy executives in my field. And like you said, I was featured on a lot of media outlets that were well known. And my career really just took off. And in the career that I had, I was exposed to a lot of wealthy people, the wealthiest people in the world, who were contributing to nonprofits with their overflow. And so I was learning about how to handle and manage wealth from a very, I call it soul centered place, because these are people who really wanted to make a positive impact in the world with their wealth. I was also a high level executive. So I was building these organizations, multi-million dollar organizations. So I learned a lot about money and wealth through that. So it was this combination of strategy, but also worthiness. So the inner transformation started first, and then the external shifts started to match the internal shifts that were happening
Mm.
within me. And that really led me to a place of, okay, wow, something's happening here. And like, I didn't even, honestly, Sarah, I don't know that I knew consciously at the time that I was doing all of these things. It wasn't like a checklist of like, do this and do this. It wasn't until I started seeing all these amazing results. Like, I manifested everything on my vision board where I had to pause. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is my secret sauce? Like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And then I started putting the pieces together. I'm like, oh, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. So it sounds very linear and well thought out, but it was very messy. And it was like definitely a lot of twists and turns to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I guess, um, speaking of like worth, and I guess so many women struggle with finding their worth. They think maybe someone else has to take care of them, or maybe they're scared of, I guess, their relationship with money. Like how does the relationship with money link to our worth and how much we invest or how much we can go out there for things we love. So was there an experience for you that happened when, like, what was the light bulb moment of like, I feel like I'm not really kind of maybe going after my worth, or I don't know how much I'm worthy of. So did you have a kind of a timeline, or did you have like a scale of how much you're worth, or was it related to how much money or how much success? So what was your relationship like with that?
Yeah, I don't know that I had put it all together. So when I was in the relationship and I could feel myself shifting into a new identity,
Mm.
when that was happening, when I was like, okay, I know I deserve better than this. Um, and I left the relationship. And then the job that I was in, I was like, I know I deserve better than this too. And so I immediately, I'm like, I think I deserve this salary instead. And so it was these like gradual understandings of like, I could start to see the correlation of it.
Mm.
The way that I work with wealth now, how I describe it is there's four stages of worthiness. There's the low self-worth, Then there's feeling deserving of it.
Mm.
Then there's confidence. And confidence is being confident in our ability to, let's say, have more money. And that's where most people stop. They
Mm.
are confident in their ability. But if you, let's say you're confident at being a manager and then you take the job or the clients away, your confidence plummets because you're basing it on something external. So you're confident on doing something. And the way I teach it is that there's actually one more level of self-worth, and that is divine worth, where you are confident not in what you do, but in who you are. And that was the root of like where I was getting through. Like at first I felt deserving of this, and then I started to build up my skill set by getting my master's degree, getting this job, and then there was this point of, oh my gosh, I'm now an embodiment of my divinity. I'm now an embodiment of this. And I really trust that if this job were to go away, that I could recreate it because I am that powerful. But it is a series of steps, I think, and phases that you go through to get to that point.
Mm.
And I think it was probably when I got to the confidence stage that I really started connecting worth and money together because I noticed like as I was becoming more deserving and more confident, I was asking for more as well too. And I like to think of it, it's really a relationship. Money is a mirror of what's happening inside of us. And so I knew that if I was not receiving the amount of money that I felt I deserved, that there was something internally that I still needed to unpack a little bit more or heal.
Mm. Mhm. So for the ones who like struggle with that, how are you able to maybe raise your standards or have that confidence? Like, was there a routine or something maybe you said or something that you did that elevated you or helped you see your self-worth, helped you to feel confident? Like, did you have a structure? Did you know, was it someone was supporting you? Or, I'm kind of curious about how you reached to that level because I know that we can get to a point where we're doing, then we don't know how far can we go. We lack trust. So how are you able to maybe trust yourself, um, to go after what you want and to be this person that you are today?
Yeah, yeah, really good question. And I would say that there are two things, and you hit on one of them, and that is trust. But before anything, the common golden thread through it all, regardless of what stage I was in, whether I was in deserving stage, whether I was in confident stage or divine worth stage, the common thread was actually spending time in nature. And it was just something that I naturally loved to do. But there is actually a science to it as well, of that when we spend time in nature, we drop into a theta state. We actually also open up our heart center to be more confident. So there's actually scientific studies that the more time we spend in nature, we actually radiate more. We become more like aligned with our ancient wisdom. We are more aligned with our confidence. And so it takes a period of time. I'd say like I have actually kind of a nuanced nature practice of when you go out and you spend 5 to 10 minutes really looking at patterns in nature, so clouds drifting by or the trees blowing in the wind. When you spend 10 minutes like that, it's actually a mental reset and you drop into this subconscious state, unknowingly, you drop into the subconscious state, and all of a sudden, intuitive guidance kind of comes through and the confidence comes through, and then you're able to know what the next step is. So, my next step is going to be different than yours, but we are all doing it in a very similar way. We are allowing ourselves to have that spaciousness, to tap into that part of ourselves that is so wise, that future version of ourselves knows exactly what we need to get to where we want our most abundant next step. And so that then is able to come through. And so that is always the starting point for me. But
Mm.
there also is what you said, there is a practice of self trust. And I think women really struggle with this. And a starting point is like, what is one small thing that you can do to start trusting yourself? So keeping your word. Let's say you decide that you want to work out and lose weight. And so keeping your word of going to the gym 2 times a week. And I say start small. Don't say, okay, like I'm going to go 7 days a week for an hour each day, because if you set
Mm.
yourself up and it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
you're going to say, I can't trust myself. So we start small. We always start small and start to build our trust that way. And I find too, like women, including myself, we say that we can't trust ourselves because we made maybe a bad decision in the past. And
Yeah.
so we like throw it all
Absolutely.
out. We're like, okay, I
Yeah.
can't trust myself as a whole. We would never do that with anybody else. Like someone that we love, if they like made a mistake, we wouldn't say, I can never trust you
No, but
again,
yeah, we
or
do it to
right?
ourselves.
Right. But we
Yeah.
do it to ourselves. And so there is this, we need to be aware of that we actually can trust ourselves, and that perhaps we are really saying that we can't trust ourselves because of one decision that we made in the past versus, yeah, at the whole, we can trust ourselves.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that in my experience. That I'm telling myself things based off things that happen. I'm like, well, what if it's different now? What if I can make a different choice? But I love that you brought nature, and spending time in nature. I feel like this is why when I'm out, I'm more creative. Like whether
Hmm.
it's in my content, whether it was in my writing, I love to write. And I find that just things start to flow without me questioning, like without me just asking, like, oh, where did that thought come from? It's just like almost like a source coming through or something that was guiding me to write. So it's like kind of tapping into the intuition, like you talked about, and how that really plays a role. So apart from like nature and like, trusting ourselves in that way, what would you say like for a woman who has money blocks right now? Like is like I can't make money. This is difficult. I feel like I'm always giving, but I never get something in return. Maybe a person, or if you're listening right now, maybe you're someone who just gives, and they don't have space to receive. So I'm curious if you have, any tips, or like if you have that in your personal life, like how do you deal with, like, have you been a person who gives a lot, or how do you receive? I guess the question is like, what's your relationship like with receiving, and what would you tell someone who's scared to receive?
Yeah, I always think that any type of money block actually exists as a way to protect us from something. And so I would invite you, in the way I've done this with myself, is to get curious around how is this protecting you. So let's use the example of giving and giving and giving. As women, we are so conditioned to be liked. And so we believe oftentimes that when we are giving and giving and giving, people are going to like us more. They're not going to reject us or abandon us, because if we don't give, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? They're not going to like me, or they're going to judge me, or what's going to happen. And so by this over giving, it's a protection of being judged or abandoned or rejected. And so bringing some awareness to, why are you doing the thing you're doing, or why do you have this idea or belief around money, and how is it actually protecting you?
Mm,
When we bring curiosity to it, instead of this more masculine structure of trying to like change your mindset, which I think can feel sometimes really aggressive, and it actually creates more resistance. When
mm,
we bring curiosity to it and we're like, oh, you're trying to protect me. Imagine it like a little child in a room that you walk in, and it's like, okay, I was scared. I really was afraid if I did this, this is what's going to happen. So you would kneel down to that little child and you'd be like, I hear you. Okay. You would bring love to it and say, okay, you start to have this conversation with it versus this resistance of like, you shouldn't be there. Let's change this. And I find this softer, more feminine approach allows you to dissolve it more quickly. So it takes some journaling, it takes some curiosity, but treating it like a relationship with someone that you love, particularly a little child. It's probably like the inner child within you and bringing that love and curiosity.
Mm. Yeah, I guess what comes through is like less judgment, like more bringing in softness, more compassion.
Mm,
And I guess sometimes when we are being in our masculine, that's hard to do.
yeah. Yes.
So I guess how would you go about maybe leaning more into the feminine, maybe some practices, or why do women who have been for their whole life in the masculine, why do they struggle to transition or maybe make a balance? Like, are we meant to be like some women right now, they're just so into their masculine that they're like, I can't tap into my feminine. That's how I've been conditioned. And their whole body knows that this is how we got to thrive and it's how we got to work hard or else this can happen. So this can be like this can feel really difficult. So what's your like approach on that? Like do you have an intake about masculine, feminine, how that really can impact maybe money or receiving? Because receiving is also part of tapping into the feminine.
Yeah. When we talk about masculine and feminine energy, obviously we're not talking about gender. There are energies in all of us. And I think there needs to be a willingness for women, particularly if they're really in their masculine, a willingness to want to be more in their feminine. So that has to be there first. But even that willingness and giving some space. I think space oftentimes is kind of that breakthrough. Nature's a breakthrough,
Mm,
space is a breakthrough, and creativity is a breakthrough. One of my
mm.
favorite books, I don't know if you've read it, is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. But she has this beautiful book of how to unlock your creativity, kind of allowing your inner child to come out.
I'm gonna read that.
Yeah, I find that's a really good entry point for women who are in their masculine. And this doesn't mean that now you're gonna have to go out and like paint a painting like Picasso, but like it allows you to just kind of get messy and have a hobby or like even plant flowers in a potted container or something to pull you out of this doing. And then that creates just enough spaciousness for one to say, okay, now I've got clear next steps on how to be even a little bit more feminine.
Mm,
When we don't do this on our own, our bodies will break for us so that we are forced to do that. So for the woman who is like, well, this is the way it just is, this is the way the world is, that's fine if you want to believe that, but at some point, your body is a truth teller and is so wise, and it is going to reroute you and say, enough is enough. So there will either be this willingness to explore
mm,
it, or your body will be the one to break you to
mm,
do it.
mm. It really does. That's why, like, I guess so many people would get sick and they don't know why they're sick. They're just like, oh, well, I'm just sick because of weather or whatever. But it's our internal kind of poking at us, being like, hey, bringing my attention towards something that is not being processed, or maybe our nervous system that is calling for our attention. And I guess it's just really mind blowing to hear because everyone has a different kind of way of reconnecting, different way of recharging. Um, and I guess going back to abundance, creating abundance. Um, I know that you talked a lot about nature and how it really helps. How is that really linked to? I'm curious myself because I have no clue. Um, how does nature impact our income? How is it related to like what's happening there?
Yeah. I would say there's two things. The way I teach it is two ways. So we have our seasons. the wheel, which is the wheel of the year. This is the framework that I use, which is an ancient framework that is like a circle that has 8 different pie pieces in it. And every turn is the turn of the season, and each season has its own energy, and
Mm.
our body mirrors that energy. So, for instance, at the start of the new year, oftentimes we're told to set these big, audacious goals. And yet, January, if we look at nature, everything is still hibernating. It is still slow. We're supposed to be introspective and slow too. And so, when we align with nature and we work with our feminine energy and our natural rhythms, we enter a flow state. And so, what happens then is that we actually get more things done in like a fifth of the time, allowing us to have more time for creativity, the things that we love, for the joy. And then we become this automatic magnet because we're vibrating at this like
Mm.
flow state frequency. And so we attract more abundance that way. The other way that we attract abundance is also through just nature practices. Because when we drop into those frequencies through a regular practice each day, or when we're connecting with our intuition and it's guiding us to the next best opportunity, or all of a sudden we're on this walk and we're like, oh, I need to reach out to this person.
Yep.
Like,
It happens.
those
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
happens. And then all of a sudden, you've got this amazing opportunity that is overflowing with abundance. So there's different ways to work um, with nature, but it all comes back to it aligns you with your flow state and it aligns you with the frequency of abundance, making you a natural magnet to more abundance.
Hmm. Wow, that's mind blowing. That really is. Like, I guess now I understand why it's more that we tap into our end, like creativity when we're out in nature,
Mm,
and maybe even in touch with animals or babies sometimes, because they're so connected to source.
yes.
They're so connected to being in the present. And when we're in our head a lot, it just creates a very disconnect because we're suffering when we're ahead. We're just thinking about the next thing and the next thing when we're actually missing out on the thing that is calling for our attention right now. So yeah, that's a very interesting way to look at it. So I guess then, connecting to nature, what would you say to someone who's like, they don't have time for that? They're like, I can't. Like, I'm just too tired, or I can't get myself to go out, or the weather. And, there are some people out there that create that, and they maybe don't feel as connected as we do, right?
Mm.
Um, what can they do about that? Like, what is something, maybe a tool or a tip that you can give them that maybe can help them move past that block of I can't because of this and this and this?
Yeah. That's such a great question. And I'd say a starting point would be what I call our sacred pauses. So get your phone, set the alarm throughout the day for 60 seconds, and you can take 60 seconds. You can go to the bathroom and sit there for
Oh,
60 seconds, and
oh.
just sit there and just allow that spaciousness. Step away from the meeting, step away from the phone for 60 seconds a few times throughout the day. And that is a really great place to start. I also have an abundance altar, and I'll share my free guide to create your own abundance altar. But I love on the abundance altar to bring in things from nature from that season onto my abundance altar. So if it is raining or if it's snowing and you just don't want to go outside, you're bringing nature inside to your altar. So you're still connecting
Mm.
with nature that way as well.
Can you talk about that abundance altar?
Yeah, so I like to create a space that's visible in my home that reminds me of abundance, that gives me that feeling of abundance. And everybody connects to a different feeling or word when it comes to abundance. For me, it's peace and freedom. So I have this space that's set up with pictures, candles, colors that represent
Mm.
freedom and peace to me, and I add different elements from nature. I added a picture of myself when I was young and really like looking like a real young child, feeling like really free. And so I have these images and things that really help me immediately connect into that frequency
Mm.
every time I go by it. And so I update it throughout the year according to the seasons and just weave things in to keep it really fresh and active as well.
So you're saying like using kind of like you said, bringing in nature and putting it in front of you so that you don't have to actually have to like create an excuse of like, oh, I can't do this, but you actually have it in front of you. Um, like, was there a time when you started doing that, or was it like when did you start kind of creating that space for yourself? Because I think I've seen that before, but I'm like, I was skeptical. I was like, does that actually work? When you kind of put it in front of you, like, what's the connection there?
I think it's a piece of the puzzle. I don't think it's like the answer. So if someone's like,
Mm,
I want more money, I'm going to create an abundance altar and that's going to do that. And then they're not taking inspired action or they're still believing the limiting beliefs or like it's a series of things. And I think throughout our day, our job is to continue to tap into and connect with that feeling tone as
mm,
often as we can. And again, I like to do it in a very soft way because I think so often what we learn through the law of attraction and magnetizing can be a very lot we're using our minds, and I think women are so much more we're in our bodies more, and so I like bringing in feeling, and I think it's easier, and I honestly think nature is the easiest and the simplest way to connect with that energy. I mean,
mm,
most people can walk outside and immediately feel more at peace. They're going to immediately feel more creative, right? And so rather than sitting there and trying to memorize 20 affirmations and helping them work and, reading all these books on the law of attraction, you could just go outside and
mm,
listen to the birds or walk through a forest and all of a sudden you're connected to that frequency. And so I think there's just some simplicity and embodiment that works with women a bit better.
mm. Thanks for expanding on that. I think that is very powerful. And, I guess my next question would be that maybe can you share a little bit about the money issues that most women have? And
Yeah.
what is it that they struggle with when it comes to money? Because yes, money, I had a belief that in the past I should work so hard, I should be really exhausted. And I'm sure it's not just me, so many of us out there that think we should put in the work, we should work hard, and it's more very like in the masculine, and you have to exhaust yourself to a point you're like, I can't really do anything to think about feeling peaceful. There's no time for that. So what's our money issues? What is it?
Yeah, it really depends on the person, but I'd say one of the core things that I see so often is that there's this belief that money is masculine. And when we can't see ourselves in money, we're going to automatically have a resistance to it. When we believe that money is associated with a power that has actually harmed our world or harmed women or harmed the planet or others, there's this like our soul is like, well, why would I want this? Right. And so I think we have to look a little bit deeper at money and be like, well, is it really masculine? Well, the world that we live in is going to let us believe that it is. But I think one of the biggest ways to pull a woman out of her power is by making her believe that she isn't capable of holding finances or by disconnecting her from her finances. So it's like,
Mhm.
like gender pay gaps and all of that. So again, one of the best things to do is to actually look at the core truth of money and abundance and this is what I did, and it really helped me. And I was astounded when I started uncovering things.
Mm,
When I felt this disconnect between myself and money and felt it was this very masculine thing, this very power driven thing,
mm,
I started to explore the history of money. And actually, the first bank was to the goddess Juno Moneta, and priestesses held and managed the money. So our first banks were actually to a goddess, and women
mm,
held and managed the money. And that was the truth for a very long time until we moved into a patriarchal society. When we look at the root of the words currency, that comes from the word korea, which is
mm.
associated with flow. The word abundance comes from the Latin word abundo, and that is
Wow.
also associated with flow. And flow is a feminine word. When we look at the word prosperous, that word is connected to the word flourish, which is also a feminine word. When we break down the core of our wealth and our abundance and the history of money, at the core of it is a woman. The definition of wealth is well, whole, and significantly valuable. And that is what women are. We are literally the embodiment of wealth. And when we can remember that, I think that breaks down the resistance that we have to wanting to have more wealth, because we're like, oh, okay, I don't have to be that gross, greedy man that is harming a lot of people. I actually am the embodiment of wealth. I get to rewrite and redefine the way wealth is used in my own life, in the community, in the world. And when more soul centered women hold money, the world will change. And that is what I believe that we are here to do right now. And that is like the core of this work as well. But it
Mm,
comes back to this remembrance. And so the wounding, I think we're so right now so much in this self-help space. We're very much looking at like our wounds and our traumas, which I think there's absolutely a place for that. But I think
yep.
beyond that is that we need to be remembering beyond the trauma. Who were we before the wounds? Who were we before the trauma? And who we were was the embodiment of wealth.
Mm, wow. That's so profound, Jennifer. I'm
It's
like yeah. It's like I'm not judging myself, but I'm saying like how there's so much to know than just money is just that. It's just there's an energy to it. There's a way to challenge those beliefs and really come out of it. So that was very interesting.
yeah. And I think that's the energy that I was tapping into when I decided that worthy and wealthy was who I was. And I think too, like when I share this story or when I share the root of wealth, I believe that every woman who hears that, like there's this pause and there's like, wait a minute, like there's this recognition, like, wait, I actually do believe this. And so all of these years of conditioning around money all of a sudden just dropped away. And you're like, wait, no, I feel this. I feel this in my bones. This is truth. And so we have to just keep coming back to that energy, come back to that remembrance. And that's why I have the practices and that's why I have the abundance altar. It's just like to continuously remind myself to come back to the core of the truth.
Hmm. Which is really at the core of kind of what we do, or just in general, we really want to know what is the truth of things than what someone has taught us in our life, especially from our parents, right? Caregivers, our society. Everyone has a meaning of things, what money means to them. And we
Hmm.
just, as kids, we just learn to adopt them because they're elderly, they must know it all. So I
Right,
must know it, and they're right. And
right.
I guess it's difficult to then grow up and question it because you're like, wow, I was in a wrong world. And it's not about judgment of them. They did what they knew, but right now our journey is to be like, it's okay to question, it's okay to start to rewrite like a story to money or whatever it is that we're doubting.
Yeah.
And yeah, how can women, I guess, step into that courage of asking those questions? Because it really is scary.
Yeah. I so resonate with that. And I think too, I think we're born into the family for the lesson that we need to learn. And so, like, when I think about my great grandmother and my grandmother who lived in Appalachia, didn't have running water or electricity, like,
Mm,
so I was instilled with a lot of um, scarcity ideas and beliefs as well. And as I've grown into this space and remembered who I am, I was like, wow, it has allowed me to, I think, even honor this journey even more. It's allowed me to even be a bit more protective of my worth and my boundaries and all of these things because I'm like, I have had this lineage of women who have lived in scarcity. And that was the lesson that I came here to learn how to remember who I am. And now that I've remembered, I can't go back. I can't go back for myself. I can't go back for my grandmother or my great grandmother. Like, I'm here to
mm,
break that cycle. And I think when we have that mission or that passion, that helps us in those moments when it feels scary to make a decision or it feels scary to challenge an old belief. It's like, no, I'm here to actually break generational cycles. I'm here to change the world. And so when you're coming from that place, it gives you a little bit more bold energy to
mm.
move through that fear.
Right. Yeah. I think that's also what kind of most women struggle with, including myself, of like, yes, I know that this is what I'm gonna do, but taking that step feels scary because like it may feel like you're the first one to break the cycle, or it may feel like people are gonna say like, who is she or what is she doing? Um, I guess I'm speaking from like my background in the Middle East, where there's a lot of like men should do, men should decide, men should hold the power, men should have the money. So I guess that's why I really was struck by your story because it is bringing a new perspective into my world, which then is like mind blowing, but at the same time, like how is that even possible? And I guess it's challenging myself too to like hear different stories, to hear different people. That's kind of the reason why I bring different people or want to bring different people on this podcast because I think people like you are creating, you know, rechanging, rewriting different stories, and especially when it comes to money, because money is something that I used to be so scared from. It was
Hmm.
almost like a person I was envisioning of this dark person, masculine.
Yes.
So I guess I had that vision of that's,
Yes.
yeah.
So many people do. And the way I like to look at it, um, I still look at it like a relationship or like a person. That's the way I relate to it.
Mm,
But I look at it, I mean, we hear that money is energy. But what is energy? Everything is made up of the divine, and the divine is actually unconditional love. So if we were to look at money like it is unconditional love, I think that's where we're like, oh, interesting. We as women don't know how to be in a relationship with unconditional love. Like we're going to self-sabotage, we're going to push it away, or we might even be emotionally unavailable to it. Like if money was unconditional love and was your soulmate, how would it what would it say about you? Would it say that you're available? Would it say that you have a good relationship? Would you say
like
that you're
that.
excited? Would you say that you're attached? Like there's so many different relationship styles that we put on money. And
Mm,
so I think that's the first place to explore. If you're seeing it as this like dark man, let's try to like play around with that a little bit. And what if it was soulmate energy? Or what if it was loving energy? And if you were in a relationship that was very healthy, what would that communication be like? How much time would you spend with it? How would you treat it? Would you trust it to always be there for you?
Mm.
Because my guess is if it was unconditional love and it was a soulmate, you would trust it to always be there for you. And so often we don't trust. We think it's going to go away or it's going to run out. Unconditional love is forever. So it's never going to run out. So it's always there. And so that is actually that little nuance really helped me to see where I was showing up with money in a very healthy way and a very unhealthy way. And so that really helped me as well.
Mm. I really like that, to look at it as a relationship. Because if we are linking it to a relationship or we're linking it to ourselves, we value it somewhat.
Mhm. Yes.
Especially when we value ourselves, we raise our standards and we ask for more and not shying away from it. Because um, was there a part in your life in the past before you get into this journey, did you shy away from money? Like, were you, maybe you received plenty of money? I'm not sure of your like past or how your relationship was like, but was there a time where you're like, no, 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 this is a lot. It feels scary to receive a lot.
My relationship was I would spend it, so I wouldn't keep it. So if you think about it, I was broke, dodging collection calls, but I was also in an emotionally abusive
Right,
relationship.
right.
And money and relationships mirror each other. And so I had a very unhealthy, I was pushing it away. The moment I had it, I let it go. I didn't feel deserving of it. I didn't feel worthy of it. And so it was the same thing. I didn't feel worthy of men that were good for me, that were coming and asking me out. So instead, I chose somebody who was abusive. And so I was doing the same thing with money as well.
Mm. And how do we raise our standards? How do we kind of have a healthy relationship with money that when it comes through, we are able to receive it? Like, obviously it's linked to our self-worth, raising our standards, having a healthy relationship with ourselves. So I guess how can we do that more? Of like when we get it, we're not like, because sometimes we keep it because we're trying to protect,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
protection, I think.
Right. Yeah. The hoarding can also be
Yeah.
when you think about relationship types, there's like the avoidant and there's the attachment. And so
Mm.
hoarding it and saving it and not spending it is just as unhealthy. Like it needs to be reciprocal and
Mm.
like circulating. So I would say first is an awareness of what your pattern is. So if you're thinking about money, are you a hoarder? Do you have that attachment style? Are you anxious about money? Like, what are your patterns when you have it? What do you do? Do you have a retirement account and yet you haven't looked at it for 5 years because you're afraid of looking at it because you don't understand it? Or when you get money, are you spending it right away or are you in debt? So you're even spending it before you can even accrue overflow. Like, what is your pattern? So start there. And then asking yourself if this was a relationship, what would be the healthy thing to do? Would I be spending maybe once a month looking at my accounts and having a conversation with it? Would I be getting to know it better and understanding it better?
Mm.
Would I have a good balance between being open to receive and then giving it or spending it as well? Just really examining what you could do in a more healthy and balanced way. And
Mm.
it's going to take some radical honesty with yourself and it's going to take some uncomfortable steps, particularly if like you're not comfortable looking at your retirement accounts and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to look at it, but I don't understand it. Well, that's okay. Find somebody who can help you understand it. I hired a financial planner that was focusing on women and she was really about educating. So every time I met with her every month, she would explain to me. And if I was like nodding my head and just be like, yeah, okay, I get it. And she's like, no, you don't get it. You tell me. And she would call me out on it. So you need more people in your life like that can really help you start to own your responsibility of your
Mm.
part of the relationship.
I think you went beyond me because I was actually going to ask this question, but you answered it, which is like, was there a support that people can reach out to about finding someone who can help them and educating? I think it also links back to education. Kind of what I'm hearing is that we got to be educated on something so that we know, so that we are not afraid. Because whatever it is that we're afraid, we're just like, we don't know what's happening there. It's
Right.
unknown. So I
Yes.
guess being clear, finding someone to show us or to even educate us on something. Because back in the days, I wasn't really educated about financial stuff. It was all
Mhm.
about they got to handle it, or your parents, or the father, or the man has to handle it. And I'm like, well, why is it supposed to be that way? Do you think there's a link? I know that we have like a few minutes left to wrap up, but do you think there is a connection to our culture as well that maybe it stems from that? And I guess how can we step out of that culture and be able to question those things without thinking I'm leaving my culture behind? Because this is something that maybe most women think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so often one of the fears that does come up when it comes to money is what am I going to lose? And it's often a relationship. Again, because money and relationship are intertwined. But if I make more money than my partner, what's going to happen? And so there's this fear of loss through the
Mm,
relationship or fear of loss of family dynamics, particularly if it's really connected to culture, if you hold more money. And so it's really unpacking how can I take a step and empower myself while still honoring the relationship. If you are partnered, it might be having a conversation saying, look, I'm on the path to making more money than you. Let's have this conversation. How do you feel about that? Again, it may not be comfortable, but I think when we start to have that transparency, you
mm,
might be surprised that that fear actually is just this um, fear that we've held, but it may not actually come true. And so having those conversations, I think, are really helpful. And if you don't feel like you can have a conversation, I think through journaling as well, it's like, how can
mm,
I still honor my culture? How can I still honor my relationships while still holding my own power? Again, at the root might be this misunderstanding of power. We think that it's like
mm,
power over. And so if we have more money, like we're having power over our culture, or we're better than our culture, or better than our parents, or better than that. But the feminine abundance is power with. So if you have money, you might be able to share it with your family and empower them as well. So, like, what is a way to walk with the people in your life instead of feeling like you're going to lose or have power over. So it's a dynamic shift that we have to, I think, unpack on our own first before we start to have those conversations.
yeah, so when you said power with, it just even just the word itself made it softer to even think about money
Yes.
instead of like I'm against, I'm fighting, I'm proving, which is very like, egotistic, or
Yeah.
if you may. But it really does shift the narrative or the relationship that we could possibly have around money.
Yeah. Power with would be like a legacy for your entire family. And so most families, I think, would be excited about that. Like, oh, you're making money. And whether you have like a family foundation or whether you invest in a family member's education, I'm doing that for my nephew, like that type of thing. And like, I'm passing along the legacy and its power with my family now.
Mm. I'm curious to know what your take is on, is there like a is there someone in the family that makes more, or is it like, for example, are women supposed to be the provider or the men? Because in my culture, like men are the providers and like they must in like invest, they must kind of pay for things. How is your take on that?
I think every culture and tradition sees it differently. But I think it is a balance. I think we provide in different ways. And so I think there's a
Mm,
balance. We need both. Like we all are the embodiment of both the masculine and the feminine energy. And it's not just about money. If we think about providing is solely a financial thing, I think that's a misconception as well.
mm,
You know,
yeah,
being a stay-at-home mother is providing a significant contribution to a family as
absolutely.
well. And so it's placing value on all the different types of ways that we provide, not thinking that just because someone's bringing in money, that that means that that's more valuable. And so
Mm.
that I think levels the playing field because we're all providing in different ways.
Mm. That's kind of how I viewed it. Like when I start to talk to different people. Everyone has a different perception, or everyone has a way they can give. It doesn't have to be money. And I had to really challenge that. So it's nice that you're putting in a way where it gotta be balanced, that maybe I'm not providing as much in this aspect, in the financial, but I'm also contributing in other ways. And I'm bringing my feminine energy, whether it was in a relationship, a friendship, or in a family. Wow. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that I still question in myself of like, wow, well, I guess how do you like how can people reach out, know more about this, know more about your services? What is it that you kind of offer and give for the woman that you work with?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at I am Jen Whitaker, and we'll probably put that in the show notes as well. I'll share my workbook that has my 7 divine feminine rituals for financial and business abundance, and that also includes the abundance altar. And then I have a few new offerings that are going to be launched in the very near future. One is called Priceless, and it's about how to embody your feminine self and feel empowered to ask for what you're worth through your pricing as well. And I will be launching right after that a Divine Feminine Business School. It's a monthly
Wow.
membership for women to really learn how to do the foundational aspects of building a business in a very balanced feminine and masculine way. So both the strategy, but also through ritual and through nature. And we'll be unpacking a lot around money as well. So a lot of really exciting things to come.
That is really exciting. I'm happy that you shared that and people can find that and I might even be interested. So
Yes, I'd
that
love to
sounds
have you.
very exciting.
Yes.
Um, I would like to wrap up sessions, Jennifer, with is there something that you want to share that maybe you think is going to be like beneficial, or someone who's like really struggling financially now? What would be kind of your advice for them to move out of that state, knowing that maybe there's not a lot of options? How can those women connect to that courage within them to find solutions to get unstuck?
Yeah, I think start with the space because every woman is so full of extraordinary wisdom. And asking the simple step in those quiet moments, what is my next highest and most abundant next step? And wait for the guidance to come. It may come in unexpected ways through a song that you hear repetitively. It might come in someone that you meet, but just be open to receiving that. And then the other thing is when you're in that place of scarcity, it's so easy to focus on the scarcity. Focus on the momentum, focus on any type of abundance over the lack, over the scarcity. And every day that you do that, you're rewiring yourself a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more to match the frequency of abundance.
Hmm. I think that is so I'm just plugging my charger. That's an important step for them to start from, so that there is kind of a sense of safety first of I got this, being grounded. I think that is really important. How do you describe yourself in 3 words?
Oh my gosh. Compassionate, driven, and creative.
It does speak about you. It does show that, like, and what's one word that you describe yourself in the past?
Oh, in the past, I would say bold.
Mm. And you
Yeah.
still definitely are in some way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Jennifer, I just feel like there's so much to unpack, and I feel like I still have like so much questions and to ask you and to know more about what you do. And things I'm even curious about in my personal life, dealing with money and kind of transitioning from career to career. So I feel like this would be super valuable for our listeners. And maybe we could do a part two sometime. But
Mhm.
it was really lovely chatting with you and just knowing more about you and your services and the impact that you're creating for those women out there, that are still kind of experiencing challenges with money and knowing that they actually have that courage. It was truly empowering, listening to someone else in that journey who went from broke to, having a lot of abundance and also a healthy relationship with yourself, with money, and with life in general. So that was really inspiring. That was, a beautiful conversation. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on and just saying yes. Actually, she reached out first, so I guess from one of the episodes I shared in the Grace Within. So I really appreciate you, and hopefully we could chat soon for a part two.
I would love that.
And
Thank you, Sarah.
yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right, guys, thanks for listening in. I will put down in the show notes all her Instagram. Do you have any Facebook, or was it just Instagram? The way
Just Instagram. Yeah.
Instagram, okay. So I'll put the link down and I'll also put a link to her website. You can kind of surf down, see what she's about and what she does. So I will talk to you guys in the next episode. I hope you really enjoyed this one as much as I did.